Let's face it, life is complicated, and so is the YouTube algorithm. We put so much effort into each of these episodes, and I honestly love what I do. And if you could do the smallest favor for me, it'll be quicker than making a cup of coffee. Just hit that subscribe button or like and follow on the audio channels. Thank you so much. In today's episode of Coffee Charge Conversations, we are joined by Guy Imbert, who at the age of 25 had a serious motorcycle accident, which ultimately led to the amputation of his leg. Fast forward to today, Guy is currently training for one of the most difficult cycle races in Africa. If you're someone who has felt like giving up at some stage, this episode is for you. Guy, what's a moment from your childhood that stands out for you?
Sure, that one throws me. As a kid, I was born in Kenya, and my dad was a game warden at that stage. And the thoughts or the memories that are most vivid are those of when we lived next to a game park called Savo East National Park. The river running down the front of the house. And there was a huge number of adventures and things there. But the one that really stands out is my sister at that stage was 18 months old, and she had her little bucket and her sand spade and everything. And she went toddling down into the river or onto a sandbank in the river. And she was having an absolute ball there. And some bright spark saw these two little nostrils following her up and down, ready to turn her into breakfast. Anyway, tables were turned. He ended up as being a handbag in the end. He was shot. Yeah, it was roughly a 4-meter croc. And he would have taken her very quickly.
So you had quite a different childhood growing up in Kenya.
Totally. Yeah. And lots of fun stuff there. The area we were in was known for its elephant population, for its buffalo population, also for its poachers. And there was constant issues in, on the one hand, protecting the animals. And on the other, they were going into a stage of overpopulation to a point at which the land couldn't carry the number that were around. And so unfortunately, there had to be some culled every now and again.
So when you were 25 years old, this is obviously fast forward a few years from your childhood, you said that you got quite into motorbikes. How did that start?
Oh, man. I think it was the typical one. My dad said to me, "You won't have a motorbike." And being a teenager, I figured I was going to be a much more careful rider than he was, and that the dangers that he saw or had experienced as a youngster himself would definitely not come my way. But little did I think, one day, going in to a small little second-hand bike shop in in Harare, there was this black beauty in the background, and I just had to have it. And on the one side, I realized it was going to bite me. But on the other, I had to have it. And yeah, it did bite me. And took a while. About 2 years later, I had an accident and I thought it was just a fractured leg. And the surgeons came along and they said, listen, a very real possibility we're going to have to amputate at the knee.
And this is at 25.
This is at 25. Luckily, they've managed to put everything together. It was far from perfect. It was a lot shorter and it didn't work as it should have, but it was there and it was mine. I didn't realize just how powerful that was until much more recently. Just on 3 years ago, I went into a surgeon locally because there was a problem, and he suggested that actually probably the best thing to do, rather than going through a whole sequence of operations to try and realign and reestablish that leg, was just to take it off and work with a prosthesis thereafter.
So you spent a lot of years with 2 legs, and were you kind of hoping that it never would get to the amputation stage?
You know, I had a buddy who often said to me, take it off. But actually in my mind, I didn't even cross my mind. There was no premonition, no desire, whatever it was, to do that. But at this point, when I saw the surgeon, it was clear that that leg was past its sell-by date. There was something catastrophic lining up to happen. Now, bear in mind that I do a lot of long-distance riding. Cycling, yes. And to be out in the Hamadulis and to have a catastrophic problem with a limb just was beyond thinking about. So with the concepts and ideas surgeon spoke through with me, it actually was clear that this was the best route to go. Besides anything else, the sepsis that had occurred at the time of the accident had resurfaced, and that's an ugly beast. It was one of these, dare I say, hospital superbugs, and it just was not going anywhere. So we took that off together with all the other stuff, and about 2 months later, I had prosthesis on, learning to walk and learning to ride a bicycle again.
What was your initial reaction when you were told that, okay, now it's, going for multiple ops probably isn't going to help, and that it was time to amputate? What was going through your mind?
Other than the obvious, oh bother.
Slight euphemism there.
Yeah, just a tad. I have a mindset which has me asking questions. And the first question was, okay, so if you don't have that, what difference does that make to life? How is it what do you have to deal with? And luckily, I have a buddy I could phone, and I phoned him, and I asked him. And he said, do you know what? There actually isn't a hell of a lot of difference. But you just got to do things a little differently. From how you get in and out the bath, or how you deal with a shower. So I think you'll agree that hopping in a shower is probably not a very good idea. Likewise, putting your trousers on. It's easy. One leg, one hole, lift the other one. When you've only got one leg when one leg is a prosthetic, you don't have that level of balance that you can do that. And of course, you've got a shoe on the end of it, typically. So you have to learn or I learned that the easiest thing to do was just to sit down, have a chair or a stool or something like that, or a bench, and thread on the clothes. And once I got that through my mind, it was fairly easy to figure out, okay, so we got other things we got to do. But one thing he didn't tell me, and that came as a shock. Operation clearly took place in hospital, which is nicely air-conditioned. But Joburg was going through a heat wave at the time. When I came out of the hospital 3 days later, straight into heat wave, that very night, I got this shock. Now, just think about it. How do you lose heat? It's head, hands, and feet. Take away a foot, and suddenly your radiator capacity, for want of a better word, is reduced by 20%. So I found that I was having to deal with temperature control in a very different way. There wasn't a case of just pop your feet out under the bottom of the duvet. It was, you've got to take yourself out the duvet, which is very interesting. And even in this cold snap that we've got at the moment, it was freezing last night.
And you still get...
I still overheated, had to throw the bedclothes off and cool down.
Were you ever in a state of denial? Did you ever look down at your leg and go, can't believe this is my situation, it can't be real?
Yeah, that happened when I was 25. And you know, it's true what they say about having to go through a grieving process. And at 25, I thought my life was pretty much done because of this ugly leg and foot that I was left with. And it took a fair time to get through that whole mourning process. And what really surprised me when it came to amputation and having made the decision to go ahead and do it, nothing at all. And I've never had a moment's regret since then. It was absolutely the best thing to do, given my circumstances.
Why?
It gave me a level of mobility that I previously didn't have. And I'll give you an example. We're now 2.5 years post-op. And yesterday I went for a 2K run. For you, cool. What? Why is that special? Bear in mind, that's the first time I've run since I was 25.
Wow.
So that's why it was special. It was slow. And I was quite shocked at the video that came through. Thought, hang on, that's an Otopi running. And it's going uphill and was having to take very short steps to deal with the prosthesis. Over time, we're going to be able to lengthen those strides and hopefully make a better go of running. And of course, it's very good cross-training for the cycling.
But I think a lot of people cling on to the past sometimes. So, for example, with running, you might go, oh, I was only able to do 2Ks, and when I was 25, I was so fit and running was so easy. Now, like, those are the good old days. Now it's such a struggle. But it doesn't seem like you view it that way.
It's a new start. So yes, I've run on treadmill where I've got supports that I can hold on to and balance myself and stuff like that. I do a jog around a cricket pitch as a warm-up for strength training and stuff like that. But those are the first run. And that's fine. It wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be. My striding wasn't how I would like it to be. But given a bit of time and effort, it'll get there. And I guess that's going to be one of the new goals.
But it seems like you've got that growth mindset rather than, sitting in a pit of worry about what could happen. You focusing on what the next step is. I mean, you said to me before today's chat, we went for coffee and you told me about how 3 days after your operation, the next day out of hospital, you were going to gym. Like, I think a lot of people would, would maybe take a few days to look at what's happened to them, maybe reflect. You were already like on to the next one.
Yeah. And let's just take this a little further back. Something else I didn't tell you. The op took place at 10 o'clock at night. 7 o'clock the next morning, physio came, "Wake up!" And we went for a walk around the ward. With a Zimmer frame and everything, just to get moving. And it's important to get moving quickly. I also didn't tell you that 2 months prior to that, I'd ridden a 500-kilometer bicycle race out through Northwest Province. And I'd already decided that I was going to go as part of the motivation for rehab was to go back and ride that again, this time with a prosthetic. And that gave huge impetus to getting back into the gym, work out, get fit, recover, and also, of course, get back onto the bicycle. And I was lucky to have massive support from family, friends of all sorts, of course, the medical team, and my prosthetist, who made a whole bunch of modifications to his normal prosthetic in order to make cycling, and especially endurance cycling, a possibility. And we discovered through this that cycling upwards of 150 kilometers in one go resulted in pressure sores. So it took a while to resolve those pressure sores, which meant going and visiting Chris, and he would adjust the prosthetic. So now I've got about as perfect a fit as I could wish for. A lot of people would tell me, "Oh, you must have a pair of shoes. That's your favorite pair of shoes. They just fit." Well, this just fits. It's so nice. And it allows me to do so much more than I could do either with the previous real leg or with the early prosthetics. But coming back to it, motivation and coming through to going towards this race again. Come a month before the race, there was a situation, I had a nerve issue, and that did prevent me from actually riding it. But again, the race wasn't actually the benefit. The benefit came out of all the training and the recovery from being somebody who was a new amputee to actually being able to move properly, and to be able to do that in quick time was the benefit.
Why do you think you were able to recover so quickly?
Twofold. I was really fit when I started, when I had the amputation. And that was a massive lesson to me. mean, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people will tell you your health is everything. But this firsthand was how important it is to have your health. Be healthy, keep it a healthy weight, all those things. And having done that, to now go out and actually actively train to achieve this goal. And that was powerful.
It's very interesting how you speak about the training versus the result. I think a lot of the time we're so focused on the result and getting the achievement and the accolades and, getting that short little...
It's always so nice, isn't it?
It is, but it's almost... I feel like we expect it to be so much better than it really is. And it finally happens. You get everything you wanted to achieve. And you look back and it was actually the training and the process that was the best part.
What does people say? Enjoy the journey. And the journey is so powerful. As you say, it's almost more powerful than the actual destination itself. Even though the destination can be hugely exciting.
It's true, but it's difficult sometimes to focus on the process. I mean, I speak for me at least. My brain's always looking at the future and what's next, and sometimes that can be really overwhelming when you've got a large to-do list. And sometimes I need to actually break it down into a process to what's the next step? How can I be fully present on that step before I move to, the next step? And almost taking it step by step, because otherwise I just look at, okay, like one of my goals now is the Comrades next year. And I wish I didn't say this now live on camera.
Take a note.
But yes, my goal for 2026 is to run the Comrades Marathon. And when I think about it, I go 90 kilometers is a long way to run. And I've watched videos of people falling just before the finish, crawling to the end. And that's quite overwhelming. But I kind of know in myself that I've got to break it down into chunks. If I look at it, it's this 90-kilometer race, it's very overwhelming. But if you break it into sections, obviously it becomes a lot easier. I sound like I've done the Comrades and I haven't, so...
Well, the way I do it in that sort of circumstance, not with the Comrades, but hold that thought. No, is to go water point to water point. I mean, we can focus on the next water point. And what does the water point happen to be an analogy for? It's up to you. So whether you're actually doing it in the Comrades or whether you're doing it and going through your to-do list, what's your water point? What's your next water point? What's your next action? What's the next thing that you need to do?
What was your first water point out of hospital?
Heal. It was simple. Nothing was going to happen until the wound had healed. And once that had happened, we could then go in and get a prosthetic fitted. Didn't tell. One of the craziest things is amputees suffer from something called phantom pain.
Phantom pain.
Phantom pain. That's pain in a phantom limb. In other words, the limb that has come off gets these almost like electric shocks. And there's nothing phantom about the pain, I can tell you. It is debilitating. I remember sitting around the Christmas dining table, and these phantom pains are coming. And it's not just a case of sitting there and stoically. I was bouncing around as I was actively getting electric shocks. It was quite scary. And there was a neurosurgeon there, and he said, "Dude, what you do is make an action, do some form of action with the other limb. So it'll stop that pain immediately, but more importantly, that'll start remapping your nerves' impulses through to the other limb. And after a period of time, your phantom pains will stop completely." Man, he was right. And what amazed me was within less than 2 weeks, phantom pains were gone. And I've never had them again. I do still get what are called phantom sensations. So that's like sort of pins and needles in the sole of a foot that isn't there, or there's a mozzie bite on the heel of a foot that isn't there. And I haven't managed to get those away. But the really serious, the phantom pain, those electric shocks caused by those severed nerves, that's fixed. That was quick. And that was about the most unpleasant part of the whole process.
What's your next goal?
Well, I've got a training ride in a month's time, which is a 200-kilometer ride. And that'll be prep for a race at the end of August of 400 kilometers.
So to put that in perspective, because not everyone rides. I'm not a rider myself, but I mean, as from my limited knowledge, I know that obviously there's the 94.7 in South Africa in Joburg, and so this would
294.7.
200 kilometers is two of those, and 100 in an Ironman. I think it's 180k cycle. And in an Ironman, the run is a marathon. So if the cycle is 180k, it must be something that most people can't do.
Yeah. It takes typically between 6 and 10 hours, let's say. When you're doing it on tar, as the Ironmen do, the triathletes do, it's probably closer to 6 hours. If you're doing it off-road, on gravel mountain bikes, which are slower by far, you're probably looking at 8 to 10 hours to do 200 kilometers.
And this is just a training race for you?
Yes. And there'll be lots of crazy people who go along and do it as well. And that's followed up by a race itself. The end of August, that's 400 odd kilometers. And we have 48 hours to do that in. So that works out at just, if you don't stop, that's just over 10 kilometers an hour.
And do you find time to sleep in between that?
It's a good idea to have a couple of hours nap, yes. Yeah.
And what these training rides, I mean, I still find it ridiculous that 200 or 400 Ks is still considered a training ride for you. What's the big goal? What's your next big goal?
So this is a follow-up. This 400k race is the one that I wanted to do immediately following amputation. So that's quite a biggie. However, it has a big brother called the Munga, which is a ride from Bloemfontein to Wellington in the Cape. And that's somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200 kilometers and needs to be accomplished in 120 hours or less. So
So
That's what we're aiming for.
In a car, that would take about 12 hours.
Yeah, full day.
In a car.
Yes.
Now you're on a bike.
So we're going to do that in 5 days. So I did try it last year, and I managed to get to 700 kilometers. Before you mentioned sleep deprivation, and saddle sores caused me to scratch on that one. But 700 k's was quite a long way.
I couldn't imagine anything worse.
Oh, there's plenty. So we have South Africans at the moment who are riding the Great Divide, which is along the Rocky Mountains. On the west side of the US. That's a couple of 1,000 miles. Locally, we have the Freedom Challenge, which is from Pietermaritzburg to Wellington. That's about 2,200 kilometers. Across the top of the mountains through Lesotho, in the snow. It's taking place right now. It's quite chilly. The conditions there are adverse. And it takes a very special kind of person to be able to get through that. In fact, even to think about it.
Why would you want to do difficult things?
It's a challenge. I think the desire to do something or to do things that not many others have done or that nobody has done is something that's almost in our genes. I mean, think of people like Shackleton and his quest into the Antarctic. All those sorts of explorer type people who go into uncharted territories. Well, we don't have much in the way of uncharted territories, but we do have some difficult events to do. And that is quite an exciting challenge. And it does stress you. It takes you into all sorts of strange, dark places. Mental, spiritual, physical, the whole gamut. And again, we spoke about the journey. Yeah, the race itself is a journey. But the big benefits lie in the journey to get to the start of that event. And you can only do that if you've got all of your little duckies in a nice row. You've got your support systems. You've got your family behind you. You've got people sorted out to help you along the way and all those sorts of things. And of course, that you're in peak physical and mental condition. So maybe the short answer is it's a way of getting your mind and your body right. It's much better than sitting on your couch watching TV.
Yeah, I think our comfort zones, I mean, I know it's something we've spoken about before in the podcast, but it feels like like in the moment, it's all you want to do. When you wake up and it's cold, you don't want to go for a 200k cycle. That's the last thing you probably feel like doing. And it's almost to trick your mind into saying, this is going to benefit me. And you know that it will. And the days that you do sleep in,
it's precious. Oh, it's wonderful. But you feel as though you're doing something wrong.
Yes. But I think it's good, us as humans, to have a goal in mind and to do things that are difficult or challenging or out of our comfort zone. And
absolutely.
I mean, for your story, I think having something to work towards straight after having, one leg and getting used to that, you're already focusing on the next goal. And rather than sitting and thinking about what has just happened and what could happen, you're going,
woe is me. And
And we all do. We all get into that woe is me mindset, that victim mentality at some point.
It's so easy. Yeah. I was very lucky though, Mike. When shortly after I had my initial accident, shortly after, about 5 years after, I ended up in hospital in Johannesburg. And one of the guys who came and said hello was a very gruff, rough American. He had 2 prostheses. He had what we call the Douglas Bader amputation, one above the knee, one below the knee.
Wow.
But what an incredible guy. And I've followed him since then. And he's always been, he's rough and he's tough, but man, what a heart of gold he has. He's always helping people. Part of his give back was to go through hospitals and chat to people and just make them aware that there is a life after trauma. Anyway, subsequent to that, he brought his Harley Davidson out from the States. And he took a quick ride down from Joburg to Cape Town. And then he went north. And he didn't stop in Joburg. He carried on straight through. I think he stopped near somewhere like Vladivostok. But it's in the northernmost point in Russia, if you go pretty much straight north. And that was the first leg of his voyage of discovery. And he has since then covered north to south, or south to north, and east to west, or the reverse, of every continent in the world except Antarctica. With what we would say is no legs. And he did this besides his sense of adventure and wanting to break boundaries, etc. A lot of what he does is to raise money for ex-servicemen, him being an ex-serviceman himself. And getting a dose of his tough love was really helpful, even back then. And it was something that I remember to this day. Awesome chap. And maybe Google one day. His name's Dave Barr. An adventurer, a soldier. Just an all-round good guy, though.
I think people would probably describe you as the same.
I'd actually be honored to be considered in the same place as him, but I think that's a long way off. Thank you.
But I see, you speak about giving back, and it's easy to be selfish. It really is easy to be so consumed in your own little world that you don't help anyone else along the journey. And I know that you created an Instagram page, and it's a very inspiring page, and I hope that it grows. I really do, because I mean it tracks your whole journey from start to finish. Why is giving back important to you?
I don't know, to be honest. I think it's just a case of who we are. And I think my family generally has been like that. And that's this. I'm the consequence. Yeah, I can't think of anything more around there.
Because you do a lot for paracyclists as well, and inspiring people who've maybe had a trauma or a physical injury in their life.
And that was part of that was the reason behind that Instagram account. I think it's run its course in its current form, which was sort of an occasional, it was meant to be a documentary that happens right throughout. It happened in fits and starts. I think now, 2.5 years post-op, it's time, and I feel I'm in a place now to change up the approach a little bit, and to focus more on the competitive side of cycling that I'm involved in. It was actually such fun to be introduced to a whole bunch of paracyclists and ride with them, especially during January, February, and at the beginning of the year, when we do things like time trials and road races and stuff like that, which is particularly well suited to people who have issues. And there's a whole variety of categories depending upon your disability, so that you are competing against people with a very similar sort of disability. And it just feels good. You spoke about the destination and the prize. Yeah, it's nice to get a medal and all this sort of thing. And it's nice to be recognized. But probably during that thing, the most fun I've had is during those races, encouraging up-and-coming youngsters, especially, in their road along the same route. They've got talent, they're racing, and it's very easy to get into a dark spot when you're out there in a race. And to be able to help push people through that, metaphorically speaking, is powerful, and it's such fun. It's such fun to see them get to the top of that hill, mountain, whatever it happens to be, and then start picking up speed and going down the other side with newfound determination.
Sometimes I feel like we see ourselves in someone else, and that's where helping others can, really, you can see the benefits of it, because we all go through struggles, be it physical, mental, spiritual, whatever it is. But I think, knowing that everyone goes through that, it's not just us.
We're not unique, are we? Well, we are unique, but the problems aren't always unique. And it's important to remember that most of us are actually just so lucky to be where we are, with health, our specific family and circumstances. And so I guess one of the questions to ask him is, what's your excuse? Why do you think you're special?
And a lot of people don't consider themselves lucky. I think a lot of people who had your circumstances wouldn't have considered themselves lucky.
Yeah. Another role model I do have. Sadly, I can't say I knew him because he died when I was a whole 1 year old, was my maternal grandfather. So he lost a leg in the First World War. And when technology was nowhere near as good as it is now. But he was famed during his later years for playing a mean game of tennis. And he traveled quite a lot, but he always had this box with him. And in his box, he had a variety of different legs to suit different occasions and different activity levels. And as he needed them, apparently, he would just select the right appropriate one, put it on, and get on with it. And my mom says that I take a lot after him. So maybe there is something in that. I hope so.
If you had to describe this current chapter of your life, if it was a book, what would you call this chapter?
First word that comes to mind is discovery. I think I'm discovering stuff about myself that I didn't know was in me. Alternatively, something to do with a newfound youth. I'm doing that stuff now that maybe I thought I would have liked to have done at a much younger age. But for whatever reason, real or imagined, it didn't happen that way. So certainly going out there and doing these things which are out of the ordinary is a tremendous exploration, voyage of discovery, if you like.
What's your final message to someone who's listened to this episode, if they've made it this far?
Yep.
About going through trauma and how do you make it out the other end?
It's easier said than done, but it's all to do with the mind. If you decide you're going to get through it, or if you decide you're not going to get through it, you're going to be right. There was never any doubt in my mind that the route I took was the right one, and to date I've not had a moment's regret. Even sitting through those phantom pains and all the other stuff immediately post-op and afterwards. And there were times when it was a little bit discouraging because progress was just not as quick as I would have liked. However, just to have that right mindset and to be progressing is important. And there are a couple of other things that are really important as well. To have a goal. Shoot for that goal. And the pain and the issues and the self-talk that comes with the aftermath of trauma like that is not the point. Fixate on the goal and aim directly for that goal. Work towards it consistently. And treasure the people around you. My family has been most incredibly supportive and continue to be so, for which I thank them hugely. The medical team was phenomenal. Luckily, the need for them, hopefully, is past. But the interesting thing is they're still watching the progress here, which is quite fascinating, and I appreciate that. And if you need a technical specialist, and I'm lucky enough to have found Chris or been pointed towards him, without him, this would actually not be happening in this fashion. He's absolutely phenomenal. He's a treasure. Part technician and part artist, I would say. So he knows all the detail and he can actually apply it. This fitting prosthesis is not a job for a robot. You have to understand what needs to be done, and he does. And with those teams around me, that's, along with the mindset, that's what's made this possible.
So I think having a goal, having a good support structure, and having a positive mindset, that's what I would take out of this conversation. And I think now we've both been honest about our goals coming up. I kind of wish I didn't say anything, but at least I'm holding myself accountable. So my goals, comrades, and your big goal coming up, hopefully finishing on the 1st of December, is the Munga. And if you finish on the 1st of December, that marks exactly 3 years since your amputation, which I think is a really, really cool story. And yeah, I have a feeling that you're going to get it done.
I'm absolutely aiming for it. We did a half job last year with the same sort of goal in mind, but for the 2nd anniversary. But it'll still be very special to be able to do it on the 3rd anniversary. And then to move on, there's a couple of other goals beyond that as well. But I'm not going to speak too much about that at all. But for your point, remember that the journey towards comrades is as important, if not more important, than actually running it. Getting mind and body aligned and ready to go.
Enjoy the process.
Absolutely. How often do we hear that?
Thanks for joining us today, Guy, and thanks for sharing your story. And yeah, I think you're going to inspire a lot of people. I know when we sat down for coffee earlier this week, you really inspired me. And yeah, I wouldn't have had this goal of comrades and been so open about it until I heard your story. So thank you.
You have no excuse now, Mike. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Enjoyed it.
Let's face it, life is complicated, and so is the YouTube algorithm. We put so much effort into each of these episodes, and I honestly love what I do. And if you could do the smallest favor for me, it'll be quicker than making a cup of coffee. Just hit that subscribe button or like and follow on the audio channels. Thank you so much.